Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 most fun Ark Tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10 we have got the Carcharodontosaurus, and the reason why I've put this creature here, as personally I really do find it fun to just go and ride around on one of these things, and then obviously you can just absolutely decimate tons and tons of creatures across the map. It really does just make for a very fun experience with a creature like this. If you can absolutely dominate the space across a map and just like kill everything in your sight, there is something inherently fun about that. The Giga kind of does do the same, but I find its mobility does lack quite a lot, and that kind of stops the fun compared to this creature, whereas you can just go for ages with this thing and you don't really run out of stamina, and the damage just keeps getting higher until that blood rage is full. So there's just a lot of element of fun just with you essentially feeling like you're on top of the world, like you're the strongest creature out there when you're on this thing. Obviously you're not, but still there's just so much fun in even taming these things, and also just for general use as well after you've obviously tame them. The tame process, I find, if it glitches it can be very infuriating, but if it actually does go smoothly, it's quite a fun and enjoyable one, especially if you got a few friends along the way. And sometimes if it bugs and you got a few friends along the way, it still does provide for fun experiences. You can just laugh about how the game is failing a lot, and you know, Ark players do like to do that a lot. But yeah, that's why I say the Carcharodontosaurus is a very fun tame. Next up we've got the Manigama, and this creature is here as you can absolutely zoom across the map with this thing, and also just as a general mount just for traveling around on, they are really successful in the fun department. I find these creatures are just insane to zoom around with. Their mobility really does make them very fun creatures, and although their tame method doesn't really have anything to do with the funness scale, we'll call it for the purpose of this video, I find as long as it does go smoothly, it can be a reasonably enjoyable one to do, because it's not just the standard knockout tame. There is some sense of variety within it, which, you know, it makes these things slightly more interesting, you could say, to get around, which I think does hugely benefit these creatures on this list. And obviously the main reason why they're here is because of that insane speed. Having these creatures travel at such a rate really does make them insanely fun for me. And you know, as a player that doesn't usually tend to just go around with creatures like this, whenever I do hop on one, it really is sort of a breath of fresh air in a way, because I always love coming back to these creatures and using them. I really should use them even more, but they have been obviously nerfed since release, so they're not quite as good as they used to be, but it's still nice to have that speed and agility. It really does add a huge element of fun to these things. Next up we have got the Astrodelphis, and this creature is here because, like, come on, it's got such an insane speed. And I promise not all the creatures on this list are just simply here because of an insane amount of speed, because, you know, although fast creatures are definitely really fun, maybe the funnest creature out there on the funness scale is not necessarily the fastest one. But for the case of the Astrodelphis, and also I'm going to say the Tropiognathus, it really does help significantly that they are fast. They would be less fun if they weren't, especially considering all the agility that they can do, and they can do it at such a speed. It's so fun and also just enjoyable to do. You really do love these creatures just for all of their insane mobility skills, and that's kind of what makes them really fun. The same goes for the Tropiognathus, and also with their immense amount of weaponry on top of it as well, it adds even more on top of it. They're just so packed with useful, nice abilities, and they're just well designed, very mobile creatures that really do go quite a long way for giving you a better playing experience. It really does have something to be said that these are some fun creatures. And yes, I'm putting two in at this spot because I was being a bit indecisive, but mainly the Astrodelphis, but obviously the Tropiognathus does fit into a very similar category of creature, so I decided to put it here as well. Next up, in at number 7, we have got the Rhinogonatha, and this creature is simply here because, like, come on, who doesn't love to ride around on this giant insect thing? And although it's a little bit too OP for my liking, it definitely is a hugely enjoyable creature to ride around on and use generally across any map. Obviously they only spawn on the islands and Lost Island in the swamp areas, but still you can transfer them to other maps and they're useful in a lot of other scenarios. Obviously they're great for just doing general PvP raiding, but they're just great as general travel mounts as well. They can pick up tons of creatures too, so if you want to get to some bosses fast, instead of herding all your Rexes up to the volcano, you can always use a Rhino Ganatha. If that's something that you want to do, you can obviously just use cryos and stuff like that as well, but you know, if you want to do it that way, you can. Also, if you just want to take some creatures across the map, or if you don't have access to the cryos at the moment, you can always just take a creature back with it, although you probably would at the time that you tame this thing, unless you've been gifted one by like a server admin or something like that. Rare scenarios, but you know, maybe sometimes it would happen. Their tame method is pretty much the same as the Reaper, it's just been ripped off of it. Obviously it doesn't really count as a rip-off because it's made by the same people, but still, you know, I felt they could have been a little bit more inventive with the tame method, but it definitely still is an enjoyable one because I really do like the tame method of the Reaper, and you know, it's a very nice one to do. I don't really like the fact that now you need to use loads of materials instead of gathering XP. I prefer the Reaper's tame method in that regard, but apart from that, really fun and enjoyable tame method. I know you don't really factor that in usually, but I find the tame method is quite fun as well. It really does make me want to tame the creature more, and then once I've tamed it, if it's still fun, it really does just elevate it on this list. I'm just gonna say, and it definitely really does deserve to be up here. It can demolish tons of creatures, it's fast, it can pick up tons of things, and it's such a great flyer for all kinds of things, and for that it really does deserve to be on this list because it can't be demoted for its insane amount of skill and power, and also just the amount of thought and design that's gone into this creature from wildcard. It really does just make it an even better one and nicer one to use. And obviously, sadly, you're going to lose yourself a creature, but I think it's all worth it to get yourself a Rhino Ganatha. Next up, we have got ourselves the Velonosaur, and this creature is here because I really love shooting those spines out of this creature. I find that is just such a useful and effective ability. Like, I know it's not really the most complicated thing out there, but I really just do enjoy this creature's simplicity in a way. It makes it so much more enjoyable to me. Very easy tame, and obviously you can get those Velonosaurs on Gen 2 as well. Like, honestly, great creatures to tame. If you haven't already and you have access to them, please go tame yourself a Velonosaur. You'll not regret it. Just for general use, they're insane. You can even take them into bosses if you want to. I'm pretty sure they can go into boss fights. If not, that might just be because I have some sort of mod installed. Obviously, maybe not the best boss creature out there, but still, I do find it fun from time to time to go out on one of these creatures and do some bosses with them, but mainly for just general travel around the map. I find them to be extremely effective, and obviously that's what I use them for the most, and I really do enjoy them for that. They're truly fun creatures, especially that spine attack that I was talking about there. It adds so much depth and character to these creatures. Even though they're so simple, they're so basic in their simplicity that it makes them really fun because they're so simple. You instantly know what to do with these creatures. There's no faffing around with things. It is just boom, there you go, done. It really does make these creatures so effective in this department. In at number 5, we've got ourselves the Gigantoraptor, and I kind of feel like I have to put this creature here. I know it's still a really new one, but I've been really just enjoying it. It's a very mobile creature, and yeah, obviously you can throw eggs out to tame it as well, but I found just trapping it works just fine, and for me that makes the tame method a lot more fun because I don't really just go into all the process of getting those eggs, and the mini game is definitely a very nice one to have, and I like how inventive that tame method is, as it's something we've never seen before. I did expect them to be a little bit larger, but obviously that doesn't really matter. But you really feel like you can do pretty much anything with these creatures. Yeah, maybe they don't deal the most damage out in the world, they still can deal a hefty amount, and you can pretty much destroy everything on the map with these things, and obviously you can carry babies with them like you could on a Maywing. And you know, there's so much use out of these creatures, and I know they're only new, but still you can get tons of great use out of these things. Next up, we have got the Bloodstalker, and I really do love these things for just general travel and underwater exploration. As just me as a person, I've always really liked the thought of an ocean, and just oceans in games always make me just generally quite excited. That's why I really liked playing through Subnautica and Raft and all those games. They really are some of my favourites out there, and the fact that I can use the Bloodstalker to do some insane underwater exploration in Ark, it really does make it a hugely fun creature for me. And also just generally, you can just basically pretend to be Spider-Man going around the map. And obviously you do kind of get an awesome spyglass sort of effect as well. As you can see, all the aggressive creatures just generally makes them really useful, because not everyone does have access to awesome spyglass out there. So you do essentially, once you have one of these creatures. And the tame method is pretty inventive as well, especially considering they did it first. You can obviously just feed them some moss chops prior to when you actually feed them the blood bags, which is obviously in your inventory in yourself, to get yourself 100 effectiveness. It's really not that much of a challenge whatsoever. And obviously on Gen 1 you can just get some hexagons anyway, and then from that you can obviously get you can get hexagons with the Bloodstalker from the Bloodstalker race missions. That's what I meant to say. It went a bit off track of thought there. Either way, insanely great just general travel mounts, and obviously great for underwater exploration, which is the main reason why I'm putting them here. Kind of a little bit undervalued relating to my last video. That'll be at the end of this video if you do want to go watch that to do with the Bloodstalker, because I find people don't use it for that enough, and it really is great for that. And obviously you can also just grapple creatures in and kind of suck the life out of them too, and if you have blood bags on you, it can heal itself quite quickly as well. So it's useful and versatile and fun in so many ways. In at number 3 we have got the Desmodus, and this creature is here just because, like, come on, it's the Desmodus. It is this like Nordic bat. Obviously I know it's not really Nordic in a sense, but it comes from a very Nordic map, which is why I'm obviously calling it that, although obviously it was much before the Nordic period when this thing actually did exist, if it did exist. Not to this scale though. I'm pretty sure it was actually an existing thing though. And this creature is just insanely great for PvP, and although I don't use it, I don't actually play Ark a lot in PvP, is what I meant to say. Whenever I do, it's really fun to just pick players off mounts with these things. Really useful ability. Also that gliding ability, general speed, makes them really nice. Just as a general fast traveling mount, it really does just make these creatures even more fun to me. And obviously with Sanguine Elixir, taming creatures becomes an absolute breeze, and you know that makes these things even more fun for me to use. They're just pretty much in endless versatility with things that you can do with these creatures, and I really do love them for that, and I get so much fun out of many uses with this creature. Next up we have got the Reaper, and obviously I had to put this creature here. Come on, look at this thing. Like, this is that ultimate Ark creature, capable of just so much stuff in the fun department. Its tame method is insane to get through. Like, I love taming these things. Again, I did say it with the Raasclark, but I find it is an even better taming method than that. And also, I find they're just more fun creatures to use. They fit into the map so much better than something like the Raasclark, and I felt like more thought and design has been put into them. And although, yes, maybe people would prefer to have that other tail ability, which does deal torpor to creatures, which the Reaper Queen does, instead of just the one that slows down enemy creatures. That's the only one real downside I can think of the Reaper. They still are so fun to ride around on, as you just feel like you can decimate everything in the map. They can just deal tons of damage, and are pretty agile in the mobility aspect too. They can even bury themselves underground. There's like pretty much endless uses for these creatures, and I really do love them for that. There's so much you can do with a Reaper, especially if you tame a good one and you put all the effort in it. There's like no better feeling than really getting to that stage and getting that successful Reaper tame. It really does it always works out for you mentally. You really do feel so proud of yourself when you tame one of these things, and it is a hugely fun experience once you've done it right. And finally, in at number 1 we have got ourselves the Deinonychus, and I feel like this creature really does have to be here, as it deserves to be on this list, as it's so versatile in so many ways. Such a great fun boss creature. Once you've got a big pack of these things, there is no better feeling than driving these things straight into tons of creatures which are really difficult to kill, and absolutely decimating them with tons of blood flying everywhere, because obviously that bleed ability, just grappling onto creatures and ripping them to shreds. It really is just hugely satisfying, and no other creature really gives me the same kick as these creatures do. I know loads of people get the same kind of kick as something like a Shadowman, but I vastly prefer the Deinonychus. The tame method, although not the most inventive, is actually just a pretty nice one. I like how it's just the Wyvern's tame method, but a little bit modified. It's a lot easier than taming a Wyvern as well, especially if you're taming Wyverns on Scorched Earth, and obviously then you you can just assemble a huge pack of these things and decimate loads of things across the map. They also do have insane amounts of speed as well, again making these creatures even more fun, because with more speed it is better on obviously that funness scale. These things also don't take full damage, so there's no kind of loss of immersion in a sense of where you can just kind of do what you want and you're just so immersed in this creature that you have no care in the world for what's about to come up next. And obviously they can park up walls as well. Nothing really can stand in your way in terms of terrain, obviously, unless it's just lava, but no creature really can go through that unless you're obviously on a magma sword, but that creature's not on this list because, you know, in my opinion, that's still a good creature, but it does not compare to the Deinonychus, which is in at the #1 spot. Hello and welcome, and in today's video, I'm going to show you the top 10 greatest Ark Tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into this. I know it's barely been out for any time at all, but I wanted to put the Gigantoraptor in at number 10 as I'm really impressed with this creature. I love its model design. It's actually a little bit smaller than I originally thought, and it isn't too difficult to tame, and its tame method is very inventive as well, requiring a sort of mini game where you do the move it gives back to you. And these things are just full of abilities once tamed. They're insane gliders, just generally great creatures anyway. They can carry eggs in their saddles, and I'm pretty sure creatures as well, kind of like the Maywing, and you can pluck their feather every 24 hours to kind of do what the Oviraptor does, but a lot better, and they deal a wealth of damage. They really are truly great creatures, and they might be in the future like the most amazing creatures. Just obviously they haven't been out for that long, but I felt I had to put them here. Next up, we have got the Rhinognatha, and this creature is here just simply because it really does do a lot of new things, and it's still nothing. There is still nothing like this creature to this day, even though the Gigantoraptor came out, and that's a really successful creature. Obviously this thing's been out for longer, we've used it more, we really know how it works as a greatest Ark creature, and this really definitely is one of those. And although yes, my perspectives on this creature aren't the best, just considering how I think it's a little too OP, I still find it is an extremely useful creature, and I get a lot of use out of it, namely with its ability to pick up things like Rexes and Parasauritheriums, especially in ASA at the moment, considering that obviously there is no sort of cryopods and things like that, which, you know, obviously we're probably not going to get until Extinction comes out, which is absolutely ages, or, you know, we'll get at just some point in the future. Obviously there are mods that you can use to carry creatures around with, but I'm trying to play it a little bit more vanilla at the moment. I do have the Dino Tracker on though, because that mod is really useful. It's like Creature Finder Deluxe, but now just into ASA. The tame method for the Rhinognatha is also largely quite inventive, not as inventive as the Gigantoraptor, as nothing's really been like that before it to an extent, whereas this is pretty much just the tame for the Reaper. It's like the exact same tame method, it impregnates your dino instead of you, and you have to use the pheromones on your creature to get it to actually impregnate that. You don't really need to do that for the Reaper, but obviously Reaper pheromones are there, but that's to stop the baby from killing you. They won't do this with the Rhinognatha. And then instead of using XP to get 100% effectiveness, there is a kind of cravings timer where you'll feed it those resources which were on screen earlier. But I don't think that's too necessary, because 100% effectiveness on this thing just takes so much effort, and it doesn't provide so much better of an experience of having this creature. So I really wouldn't do that in general, but if you want then you can, but I would just recommend get the highest level one that you can and tame it at whatever effectiveness it wants to tame at. And if you do have those resources at the time, then you might as well go for it. If you don't, then don't really bother, it's not all too necessary. Next up, we have got the Reaper, and this creature is just the king of Arboration, and nothing really does beat this creature when it comes to how well it's suited to its map, and just how much of an influence it was for future Ark creatures to come, as that taming method was something like we had never ever seen before. And considering this was 2017 Ark, that is still just like, that's insane that this creature came out. It seems like such an up-to-date new creature by its features and all of that. And maybe yes, it isn't as feature dense as some of the newer creatures that only has its main attack and obviously that tail ability in the fact that it can go underground as well, but still it's so well designed, its animations are clean, it looks amazing, and its tame method is inventive, very inventive for the time actually. As this thing, you would get impregnated by it, you find a Reaper Queen, knock it down until it glows. I think it's a reddish purpley glow, or I think below 1000 health, and then it will impregnate you, and then you gather loads of XP, and out will come that Reaper baby, and you'll use those Reaper pheromones to stop that baby from killing you. But it probably still will a couple of times. And on Gen 2 you can do these things like absolute cake as well. So if you really want to get yourself a Reaper easily and you have Gen 2, then watch Raasclark's tutorial on how to tame Reapers on Gen 2. It is absurdly easy. Next up we have got the Maywing, and this creature is here just because it really is like the peak of travel mounts for me in a way. It is just so speedy, so useful, and you can just gather so much agility with this creature, and you can really get some insane speed on no matter what map you're on. You can really just dash through everything, and it doesn't matter too much about the elevation of what map you're on. You can still glide around with absolute ease. It only really becomes difficult if you want to go up in elevation, but you won't really be doing that too much, and they are very quick on the land as well, and they can jump up, so it's not very difficult to traverse things like mountains, especially on the islands, considering they're really not that big when you compare them to other maps where there are a lot bigger things. Crystal Isles is a good example there. Maybe some of those higher islands are not things which you will be reaching on the Maywing, but it depends. But you'll probably be able to get up there with just a little bit of hard work and effort. Also, these things do act as a portable feeding trough as well, which is really nice, especially for you breeders out there. You get a Gigantoraptor and you get yourself a Maywing, you've got yourself a really perfect combination. And also, they can gather berries as well, which is a nice, neat side ability. They can also glide along top of water as well, and they're pretty good swimmers. Next up, we have got the Shadowmane, and this creature is here just because it is so densely packed with abilities, and it really does need to be here for all of those insane abilities on which it wields. It is an extremely fast mount, capable of so much, and it also has tons of ability as well. It can jump to great heights, and really it can do this at great speed as well. Also, on top of that, these things do have the pack buff, which definitely does aid them in all kinds of combat scenarios. They can also go invisible as well, although you need a mate boosted pair, or at least one of them, one gender of the side of the Shadowmane. I can't really remember because I don't use that ability all too much, but they really do aid themselves with the hydration buff, which only it, the Spino, and as far as I understand the Crystal Wyvern has, and this just makes it deal even more damage under the water. Especially great because it is a hugely amazing underwater swimmer. Its only real downside being its tail method, which is blasphemous at best, but you know, we'll accept it just considering how great this creature truly is. In at number 5, we have got the Baryonyx, and this creature is here just because it is such a great caving creature, and it has been such a great caving creature for so long, it needs to be put in the greatest Ark creatures. It's just a favorite of mine, and I love using it in all ways. I just like using it as a general travel creature. I like using it just for defeating creatures around the map, and obviously I love using it for caving, and it is a very good underwater exploration creature, underwater caving creature as well, especially just for exploring those underwater caves that aren't artifact caves, just the normal underwater caves which you'll find on maps like the island, and I think the center probably has them as well. You know what they are, and yeah, they really are great at that, especially considering they do have a special attack as well, where they can stun creatures up to the size of a megalodon when in water. You can't do this on land, but you know, it's not 2015 anymore. Hopefully the land sharks aren't around, but you know, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. You know, Ark's still largely quite a buggy game, and I'm sure ASA has its whole manner of land sharks out there, but obviously you won't be able to stun them because you're not in the water. Either way, very nice creature, has a very decent amount of health, great damage, great stamina, great mobility, great abilities, and great uses. It's a must-have for me. Next up, we have got the Bloodstalker in at the number 4 spot, and this creature is just so great and so useful for me. So let's start with its tame methods. Maybe not the best in the world, requiring you to feed it blood bags, and also some smaller tames of yours. The moss chops is the preferred one for me to get up to 100% effectiveness. Spawns in the bog biome on Genesis 1, and it's also on Gen 2 as well. And this creature just is so great and so mobile once you've got it, especially in the water, which is what I mainly use it for. And it's like the only real travel mount to have on Gen 1. So it's a whole map where this is really one of your only options, at least native to the map. You can obviously bring some other creatures over like Maywings and Rock Drakes, but obviously flyers are banned on Gen 1 as well as on Arboration. So gliders and things like the Bloodstalker and all manner of other travel creatures that use some different methods really are going to aid you there. But also just across any map really, the Bloodstalker is capable of getting around with immense speed. It also tells you the aggros of all the creatures around you, so it is really easy to get away from danger even before the danger is there, as you can simply see if that creature's aggroed onto you, because sometimes it might not even look it, and then without really guessing or trying, they will just run at you, and you can end up in some pretty sticky situations. They're also great for gathering hexagons on Gen 1 as well, as you know, there's a lot of bog racing missions to use the Bloodstalker. If you've done the alpha one, then you've qualified as a good Bloodstalker flyer, by the way. That's the rule that I've made. Either way, fabulous creature. In at number 3, we have got the Desmodus, and this creature is here for its Sanguine Elixir and just what it has done to shape the Ark game. It is an extremely useful PvE and PvP mount. For PvE, obviously, it has the Sanguine Elixir, 30% of the tame done like that. It's a blood bag farm, and it can really get you around the map with some speed with that gliding ability. It can also grapple onto all manner of objects, vertical, horizontal, whatever you want really. And on top of that, for PvP use, these things can pick people off riders like no problem whatsoever. Absolutely OP for any kind of PvP madness that you want to get into. So if someone's flying around or something like a Pteranodon and RG, this creature's got some serious speed on it, and you can just pick them off and dispose of them as you will. And I've definitely been the victim of a few Desmodus pickings, but I've also been the subject of some few Desmodus pickings as well, and it really is a great way of just getting that PvP in, and it's not actually the hardest thing to do considering just how largely OP this creature is as a flyer, and it definitely is a must-have for me. In at number 2, we have got the Argentavis, and this creature will always pretty much be at the top of these lists in my opinion, just because the Argy is so versatile, so useful, and it's been like that ever since the game came out, and this was in it, obviously with a considerably worse model, but still, since that TLC, this creature has become even better with a new model and a new slew of abilities. Now, it does have a smithy as a saddle, which really does benefit it, especially just considering what it does. Like, it's essentially like the best metal gatherer in the game in a way. Obviously, it doesn't gather metal, you use it with an Anki, and then from that, you can get yourself loads of metal, crystal and obsidian, and it has tons of weight reduction, so it's a great metal transporter, resource transporter, and you can pick up a very high range of creatures as well, which you might not expect with a creature of this size. And really, it just is extremely useful as a general travel mount as well, especially with the smithy as its saddle, which you can repair any of your armor or metal tools as long as you have some smelted metal ingots in its inventory. And they do put up quite a fight as well, having quite a lot of melee and a very decent health stat, and also some decent stamina to keep them fighting for long, which obviously does actually make them really great flyers as well. They can fly for long distances, and although they're not as fast as a Pteranodon, they don't need to be. They have a different use case, and also they do have a nice neat little regen buff as well. If you eat something, obviously you don't have to kill it, but if you kill something and then eat it, then you get a nice regen buff, and you often see Argies in the wild doing this. And in at number 1, we have got the Deinonychus, and this creature is here just because it is my all-time favourite, and nothing really does replace this on the greatest Ark creatures list. So let's just start with the basics and what you'll probably see and notice first. It is an extremely mobile creature that also takes no fall damage, and on top of that it deals hefty amounts of bleed damage and can grapple onto large creatures and even deal bleed damage to bosses, which as far as I'm concerned no other Ark creature can. It also has a very reasonable health stat, especially for its size, some nice stamina, some nice weight, and obviously a lot of damage. You can melt through bosses so quickly, and this especially does help considering it has the pack buff on top of this as well, and obviously that pack buff is just going to buff you even more. Obviously the name does suggest it, and you're just going to get those bosses done even faster, and who really doesn't want a Deinonychus army? Also, these creatures are very easy to tame, maybe not your very simple knockout tame and it's over and done with. You steal their eggs from a nest. So sorry if you get the bug where they don't spawn, because you're missing out really. These are just such great creatures. Then from that you can just raise them with a couple of torches, obviously incubate them and then raise them, and it's not too bad. As long as your rates aren't on official, then they shouldn't take the longest amount of time to raise, and then you've got yourself some Deinonychuses and a Deinonychus army. And also they can kind of parkour around the map as well, so they can climb any kind of wall, vertical surface, which again does very much aid them in just traveling around the map. They really are a great all-rounder, a must-have, greatest Ark creature for me. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed, as I definitely did enjoy making it. As always, comment down below what is the greatest Ark creature to you, and if you didn't agree with this list, put your 10 greatest Ark Tames in the comments below. And with that, I'll see you all later.